Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Caines, and Ed Mann.
Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast of Free Devs and a Maybe with me, Michael Budd, and today just one other of the devs, Ed Mann.
Hello, I'm the Maybe.
I know you're thinking you're the least favourite developer on the podcast, but so we could get in at short notice. Unfortunately, Lou and Fraser are on is it a riverboat cruise together?
Together, yeah, in France, I think. They're going there to Paris.
But it's like a riverboat cruise when you like do painting as well or something, or
well, it's painting for Lewis, and then it's obviously the bouquets and the the flowers for Fraser. So
yeah, I'm sure they're having a great time and they're sorely missed. But I'm looking forward to seeing their work when they get back. And yeah, hopefully they've just had some good quality time together. They've certainly needed it. I think
they've been quite stressful together. There has been a few
arguments, a few fist fights. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not pretty. But yeah, they'll be back hopefully next week, although I think Lou's quite busy, but he's hoping he'll be back as soon as he can. And Fraser, as far as we're aware, will be back next week, so fear not. So today you've just got me and Ed Mann. So hello. How has your week been, sir?
It's been good, man, yeah, absolutely. A couple of blog posts being done, usual work as every other week, but... yeah,
I don't think I've seen these. Did you put them on Twitter?
I posted them yesterday in the morning, so I don't know whether you check it in the morning, so... And they were quite sporadic, like I was kind of like impulse, you thought, I'm going to do this blog post, because I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, just did it.
Right. What were they on?
Well, so the first one's on Arch. Well, it was funny, because last week I had to reinstall my laptop, and... As you know, my laptop's great. It's not a MacBook, as Mickey keeps going on about. It's a HP beautiful salmon pink laptop. And I, instead of going down the Windows route, I thought, just do Arch Linux or Linux in general. But I voted for Arch Linux, and I've never gone back really. And this is just my notes I did for Arch Linux and the Awesome Window Manager, which is the actual name of it is called Awesome Window Manager. So it's quite cool. I dumped them on there because I needed them again. I'm thinking, well, if anyone else needs them, so might as well put it online, and if it helps anyone else, great. But yeah, so that's one of the blog posts, and then the other one is the Y Combinator, not like Hacker News, but the actual combinator you can use. Have you heard of Y Combinator?
Never in my life.
So it's quite interesting because it's one of those things where it's good in, I'm going to put in quotes, typed Lambda calculus, which sounds confusing, but really, in what we care about in PHP is this whole idea of recursive closures. So say you've got like the Fibonacci sequence, or, I think the other ones, the factorials and stuff.
Yeah.
You normally name a function and you can just recursively call it again.
Yeah.
But imagine if you couldn't name the function, in a sense. So, like you're assigning that, because now functions are first-class citizens, you can assign them to variables. Right. So inside the actual closure itself, you don't actually know what the name is. So using a Y Combinator kind of has this, it's a very magical thing that allows you to, in a sense, make non-recursive code recursive by passing in the function with it. It's quite cool. So I did that in PHP and I had a little fun with it and stuff. So, yeah.
That sounds quite cool.
How about yourself?
Well, before we go into that, I was just going to ask you about Arch Linux, actually. Because obviously I know you've had it for quite a while, but and I know you rave about it, but what is it that is so good about it then?
So you've got your other distributions. Have you played with that? You played with Ubuntu and maybe a Mint, I think.
I've played with Ubuntu and Mint. They are the two that I have played with, yeah.
They're kind of like the full stack, and it's quite interesting that we're talking about frameworks there. Full stack framework type things where, everything's inbuilt, the batteries are included, and it gives you that kind of a feel of a Windows box or a Mac box when you start up. Yeah. With Arch Linux, you actually build from the bottom down. Well, sorry, bottom up. So, you start off by installing just the base, installation that you need to get started, and then you install like the window manager, which is, you've got like GNOME, or you've got XCFE, or you've got stuff like KDE, but then you've also got Arch. And you can build it up yourself. And it's quite a nice way because especially the instructions on their wiki are so good. So you can go through their wiki and stuff. That's why my notes are really quite minimal. And I really just emphasize, just go on their wiki because you can find all the stuff you need on there for it. But it helps you learn Linux and kind of, the way, because it is confusing coming into the Linux world from Windows, where you've got installers and GUIs and stuff like that, and you're just starting to make and compile all these random programs. So it kind of helps you learn from the bottom up, from the kernel up approach. And
there's some very confusing terminology, isn't there? Like the kernel for one, but it's very different.
Well, yeah, because you've got window managers, you've got desktop environments, and when you're in a Mac and Windows world, you're kind of like, yep, this is what you get, and you boot it up, and that's it. So it's definitely a good learning experience. I definitely recommend like playing around with something like Arch Linux, even like a virtual machine or something, just to get a feel for how Linux works from the bottom up.
And in terms of like entry level and stuff, you would recommend that to anyone, or Or you say use something like Ubuntu first to break yourself in? Or?
I mean, it's quite interesting because I suppose it's weird for us web developers because we probably dev on a Windows or a Mac box, and then we're very much like, well, it's cheaper and it's probably better and it's more widely available to use a Linux box in the actual, for when we're deploying. So probably anyone actually, any web developer may be quite good to be able to get that feel for what's actually happening, what you install to build up this system itself, and the whole like Unix philosophy of applications do what they need to do, and it's quite a modular approach to it and stuff. So I'll probably recommend any web developer. It'd be probably good to have a little go at installing your own from the bottom up.
But for you, I mean, Arch Linux, it's a case of like less is more, I guess.
Oh, I love it. I love it because another thing is it's got this rolling release cycle. So stuff like Ubuntu and Mint, they have like, and pretty much like Mac and also Windows just have this like, you've got like XP, you've got 7, you've got Vista, lovely. And with Ubuntu, you've got 12, you've got 13, you've got long-term support releases and stuff. With Arch, they release ISOs, but they're like literally snapshots of what like programs are at that time. But it's called a rolling release cycle where you just update it and you update each individual bit as it goes. So you could have I use an ISO from back in August last year, but then you install that, but you use that as a live CD, and then you install the actual downloaded version of the latest components. So you always get the latest and greatest of everything.
Right.
Which can be quite scary because, support and stuff, that's what Ubuntu and all these other distributions give you, is the support saying, we give you these versions and we know they're supported. With Arch Linux, it's more the latest, here's 5.5 of PHP immediately when it's released, instead of let's check it beforehand. So, it's more of a geeky kind of Linux distribution than a one to, get yourself dirty with the Linux world.
I'm just surprised. Obviously, I know what a keen C# programmer you are, and I imagine it makes it quite hard running Arch Linux.
I love you, yeah. C# is a lovely language. Actually, C# is a lovely language. It's better than Java.
What?
It is. It's where they're far more open to new things and stuff.
Right.
Like with F# and stuff, they've added it, like the idea just on there, the beautiful CLR, but, anyway.
Yeah, and if you completely disagree with what Ed Mann's just said, feel free to send hate mail to his address.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's.
How about yourself, sir? How's your week been?
I'm just getting. Everyone must be getting bored of hearing me say this, but yeah, it has been a particularly tiring week. So I've got 2 big assignments in this week.
But that's tomorrow, though, isn't it?
Yeah. After tomorrow, I will be a new man. There'll be a lot of weight off my shoulders. So just kind of. One's like a weekly assignment that I get, and one's like the other one's a really big one. I get 2 for the module, and this one's like on genetic algorithms. So I kind of got my code to the point where it was working, and kind of like followed all my lecture notes, and then combined that with lots of stuff that I found off the web. And thankfully, there's a lot of great material on there.
Stack Overflow in particular is amazing, isn't it?
Stack Overflow is brilliant, yeah, and actually found like someone's code, I was just able to take that and run it. It's kind of tackling a different problem, and I wasn't looking to take his code, but just get an idea of what he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely, it gives you that kind of idea of what's going on and
the structure
you need.
Exactly, and I won't go into too much detail because we obviously aim this podcast at people who are just starting out. But again, it's something that sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. In fact, really, genetic algorithms are a really inefficient way of getting stuff. It's kind of like the kitchen sink approach. But a lot of the tutorials I saw online, you've got 2 ways of doing it. But obviously, basically, you want to start off with like a random selection of things, and then gradually mutate them and get closer and closer to your actual solution. And people were doing it different ways, and obviously some people were working with like whole numbers and stuff. But the way that I preferred to do it was actually just having like a binary representation of a number. So I literally can see all the ones and zeros. So then when I'm making my mutations, I can see really clearly what's going on. So that's been really cool, and actually got that working quite fairly early on. But it's just the actual tuning and getting the actual fitness working to make sure
it's literally like you tweak the input just to see what the output happens. It's like a black box in between almost, isn't it?
Exactly that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just I've got to get that in for tomorrow, and I'm just still tweaking the fitness method to say, look, is this closer? Is it worse? All that kind of stuff. So, but once I got that working, it should be pretty good. And I know we mentioned it in the podcast last week, that JavaScript example with the Mona Lisa picture. But again, if you want to have a look at just kind of dip your toe into the water with genetic algorithms, just want to see what they do, check out that link that we put last week with the Mona Lisa, because it will show you.
That was so cool.
Really, really cool. That guy's amazing. I dread to think how he's done that, but I'm definitely gonna have a go myself actually after I finish and try and do that myself.
If you go on his homepage, he's got a game of Super Mario in the background on his website.
Wow.
Where you can actually so the guy is pretty much a JavaScript ninja, which is pretty cool as well.
I bow before him. It's amazing. But I'd love to get back into JavaScript at some point as well, and really try and get really good with it, other than just the bog standard kind of JavaScript that I do on a day-to-day basis.
That is a very good segue, sir, to Picks of the Week.
Oh,
I like that.
You've done a lot of JavaScript, haven't you?
Well, I've had the experience. I had the fun this week of having a bit of fun with JavaScript for like a test thing, and I've kind of thought to myself, JavaScript, how to do it, and I kind of have jumped in. I knew enough JavaScript to play with Node and stuff, but it's when you get under the hood, like kind of working out the internals of it, kind of thing. And how prototypical inheritance, which sounds complicated, but really it's a lot simpler, where, one thing is a prototype of another thing. So it's just this chain up, very much, inheritance, what you assume, you've got your parent from your child and stuff. Yeah. But how powerful it is, and how we try and meld kind of our classical approach of inheritance, from languages such as Java and PHP into JavaScript. And because JavaScript is so flexible and so loose in it, you can actually do that, but you also have many other ways of doing it. So I've got a link that I'll put in the show notes called objectplayground.com, and that shows a visual representation along with a YouTube video. And it was the best YouTube video. It's produced amazingly, and it's like 20 minutes long, and it will tell you everything you need to know about how prototypical inheritance works, how prototypes work, how JavaScript really works under the hood, really, like in not really under the hood, but how it implements, the idea of inheritance and chaining and stuff. And I really recommend it. It shows this. Actually, it has a client-side application which generates graphs of each of the individual. Like here's your prototype, here's the how this code gets converted into these objects. Right. So really, really worthwhile. It's called objectplayground.com, and I definitely recommend that.
That sounds pretty cool. I will check that out. Since I've got a spare 5 minutes, that sounds pretty awesome.
So a couple of years, yeah?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, to be honest. But I'll get there, definitely.
I've also got another actual... this thing, April Fool's, of course, was yesterday. 1st of April.
It was, yes.
And I don't know about you, but the one that I found the most hilarious wasn't the Google one with Pokemon, but it was, in fact, there was a thing on Hacker News, the Apache Subversion project moving over to Git. So they were going to move, and a lot of people believed it because it was too geeky to be. Yeah, it was one of these things where, and the person, and very well, they got some core maintainers kind of in on the joke. And people were quite bad, they were quite angry with it, which was quite hilarious. And it turned out
just
an April. Yeah, so the Apache Subversion project. So if anyone don't know, Subversion is a version control system similar to as Git is a version control system. They're a little different, where Subversion's centrally version controlled, where Git is distributed, and they kind of compete in a kind of way. So obviously a good joke would be Apache Subversion, the actual source code for that version control system, moving to Git as their version control system, which would kind of defy the purpose. So it was quite hilarious. I was actually, because I even bought into it yesterday. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, is this the end of Subversion? You know, and all this. And then, yes, today, it turns out it's April Fool's. Well, actually, last night. So I thought that was quite hilarious.
Any others?
Another one, actually, is a geeky one for the people who extension building and stuff, where I've been looking into that a bit more. And there's a framework or library called PHP CPP, which is, in essence, it's C++ 11. So they C and C++ have these standards, similar. Well, not similar, but they're like feature sets of what Python has, where this is what the language is at this time, and you write your compilers and stuff to this spec as a syntax, as a language. And PHP CPP is, in essence, it makes PHP extension developing a lot easier. And if you go on their website, php-cpp.com, you'll see how easy it is to create like hello world functions, etc., using stuff like type inference and stuff. So it's quite cool to be like, I show you in my blog post the this hard way of lots of macros and lots of boilerplate code to then be able to. I'm thinking about doing a blog post on it, how you can do it with this library to save you so much time using it in C++ instead.
Okay, that's very cool.
And finally, PHP Storm.
Yeah, I saw you tweeting all about this the other day.
I thought to myself, is it time for me? Well, with Atom coming out, etc., which is just GitHub Sublime Text, if you really want to be honest. It looks so similar. Yeah. I thought to myself, shall I look at IDEs in the PHP world? Because I'm dealing with a big project at the moment, and I'm not going to lie, maybe just a text editor on its own with a couple of bells and whistles with Sublime with plugins and stuff. Maybe it'd be better for me to use an IDE, because in Java, Scala, and stuff like that, you're accustomed to use these IDEs that help you a lot. And I looked on JetBrains because I used their IDE, their IDEA one, which is for Java, and I was like, oh, they've got PHP Storm, and I've heard quite good positive things about it. So downloaded that, installed it. There's a 30-day trial, and it's amazing. And it's really hard for me to say, oh yeah, this is the way you should do it. That kind of religious approach of, I hate people with podcast, saying that, but it really is amazing. It will save you so much time.
Did you just say 30-day free trial?
Yes.
I.e., you have to pay for it afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
You know how I feel about this kind of thing.
I know. Paying for stuff. Yeah, it's like 30 quid or something. But I've actually already paid.
On a developer's salary. Who's going to be able to afford that? It's ridiculous.
Well, actually, it's 20 quid if you've got a education account, a university account. So you're okay. Now you're in. Well, it's amazing though, because they've literally, I think what they do is they've got the idea of, they do a lot of IDEs. So they've got one called PyCharm and RubyMine, and they're for Python and Ruby, and then they've got one for Java, and they've got one for iOS, Objective-C development, and they've got PHP. And I think they kind of go with this idea. So they're IDE company, but then they have, each individual department deals with their own thing, and you can really get the sense and the feel that these people are PHP developers, and they know exactly what we want. We want good syntax support in PHP 5.5. They also support stuff like Vagrant out of the box, as helping you with GUI Vagrant and SSH remote tools and stuff like good old Composer. They have Composer support out of the box, which is great. And I love being on the terminal, but it is quite nice to have it all in one place, and yeah, I really can't knock it at all. And then obviously the debugging tools, because that's one great thing about an IDE is the debugging tools, and be able to trace through, and everything like that, and walk through programs. And they have Xdebug, and hopefully they'll have the new GDB. Well, so I don't know the name of it technically, but the one that Joe guy's working on that will be in the next version of PHP. So yeah, I really am quite impressed with it at the moment. So yeah, at the moment I'm. Any
tools for PHP Unit?
They do. Oh. Absolutely, sorry about that. Yeah, they have all the PHP Unit. They have it. You come from a Java world of a JUnit. All those tools are available in PHP Storm. Similar, if not exactly the same. Also, they have web side of it, because they actually have a web application. They have their own version, their own IDE for the web, but they've actually included a lot of things in the PHP one, obviously, because PHP is a language for the web. So you have stuff like JavaScript support, Handlebar, Mustache template support, CSS support, Emmet support, Bootstrap support. I need, Mocha support. Oh, it is quite amazing. And then all the live debugging in JavaScript, live editing and stuff as well is supported. Less Sass, CoffeeScript, Dart. The list goes on how many cool things this pro. And for 60 quid, I can't knock it at all.
£60. I thought it was like 30 a minute.
No. It's £20 for you. You
Right.
know, your education. But for us people who have to buy it, you know, who work, it's £60.
£60. I mean, don't get me wrong. For people like Fraser, who's on what is it, 85k a year, whatever he's on.
I think you can double that, can't you? And then power of two, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I dread to think what he's on these days.
Especially
but,
the flower on the side, you know, his floristry business.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe that's what paid for his Porsche. I don't know. But all I know, he's probably earning quite a lot of money. So maybe for people like him, it's all right. But £60.
I want to support it. That's my kind of motto with software is if I love a piece of software like this, and I know the people who make it are developers like us. You just want to make it easier. You know, I really can't knock them.
I'll definitely check that out. I'm only kidding about the price, really, but I'll have a look.
Cheapskate, God, unbelievable.
But to put you on the spot, then, what's better, this or Atom?
Oh, they're two different tools. So, and I love that. You know, it's a very political approach. Well, you know, I'm not actually going to answer. I will answer. I will say this is better because obviously for PHP development, this will make things quicker and far more intuitive. But as a text editor, obviously, it's kind of throwing, you know, the kitchen sink at something that really just needs, you know, I don't know, insert something that makes sense there. You know, Atom is cool because it's got it's because I do prefer Atom. I think the Sublime 3 is coming out soon, and you've got Atom, and they're kind of competing in the text editor world where they're a little bit less, you know, you have to install a lot of plugins like Vim style to build them up, and they're always going to stay around, and I always will love them. But I think I'm working with a big project at the moment, and PHP Storm has all these tools with unit testing and stuff, and it will save me having to have a boatload of terminals open, or I use something like Screen or Tmux to, you know, obviously, you know, mutex them and stuff. So helping me out with these bigger projects, I definitely prefer this.
Okay. Well, for anyone who is listening to this and they don't know the difference between the IDEs and text editors and all that, we did do a podcast at some point. Episode 5.
Perfect, sir.
So there you go. If you want to learn a little bit more about that. Yeah. But if you want to learn about that, go and download that one. It's a brilliant episode.
So how was your week? Well, no, we're asked how your week is. How about picks, sir?
Okay, so I have been a little bit naughty, and because I haven't had time to do anything, but I equally want to give something to our listeners. So I did have a little look around just before the podcast. I want to start off with a quote of the week, if that's all right.
Go for it.
And I'm going to make myself look really stupid because this guy is really famous, and I can never remember how to pronounce his name. Is it Dijkstra? Dijkstra. Thank you. That's it. I think it's a really famous quote, and you've probably heard it 100 times, but it is, testing shows the presence, not the absence of bugs, which I think is, certainly in the concurrency world is used quite a lot, but that's true to any programming really, is that you can test stuff over and over again, but you're only really showing that you can only say, well, this error does exist. You can't say that other errors don't exist, basically.
You're never 100% sure that something... I think that's a perfect quote. It really is one of those quotes that, Yeah. Him and Donald Knuth, I have man love for them. And obviously Turing. Have you ever been to Bletchley Park?
No, I want to.
See, I want to too. Maybe we need to arrange this because we live in the country where Bletchley Park is and we haven't been there. How have we not been there? And we are into algorithms, we're into computer science.
I wonder how famous it is, like, outside of...
I think it's pretty big, actually, because...
Yeah, I'd hope so.
The inventor at Turing machines, the inventor of computer science as it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. So, I think it's quite a shame on us that we haven't been. So maybe we have to arrange a little 3 devs meet up and go to Bletchley Park. Yeah,
definitely. We were actually talking about the Turing test this week in one of the lectures, actually, which is really interesting, but probably not something to discuss for this podcast, but anyone who's interested in Alan Turing, check out, just go to Google and type in about the Turing test. It's really interesting little test that he had for basically like kind of categorizing artificial intelligence, I guess.
Oh, wow, I've never heard of that.
Have you not?
No, that's cool. What's that?
Okay, you want me to go to... All right, well...
go on, the listeners will love it. Sorry, listeners.
Okay, again, so I've read about this a few times, so I'm going to make sure I get it right. But basically, obviously, Alan Turing, he was massive in the world of like algorithms, and obviously did a lot of the Enigma decoding and breaking and all that kind of stuff.
That code, breaking the Enigma code.
Exactly. So he's like one of the forefathers of artificial intelligence as we see it in the modern day. And he basically set up tests really to say, well, what is artificial intelligence, and and how good is it? How can you deceive someone into thinking? And basically, what it is that he had like one person in one room, another in another room, and there was like a computer in another room, basically, and one's just moderating, and this person's talking, and basically the person had to say whether it was a computer or not. Or I don't think they told them that, but they were trying to see if they would detect whether it was a computer or not. And I don't think they did. I think they got it to the point where the computer was good enough to convince the other person it was a human. But that was just one particular test. But the Turing test itself, I think, is more general, and it's basically just about categorizing artificial intelligence.
He's so cool. He did like the Turing machine, isn't it, which shows the limits of what we can actually program or kind of thing, compute. Kind of, it just absolutely amazing, man. And
I mean, I could bang on about it for years, but obviously, my lecturer this week, he said something, and I'm not 100% sure I agree with him, but basically, he would say, like name something that a computer won't be able to do at some point in terms of like what intelligent beings can do, and he was saying that he would argue anything. And I'm still not sure about that, to be honest with you. But it's a real
so you believe that that computers will be able to do?
He believes that, yeah.
Oh,
I'm not convinced. And there's some really interesting questions out there, like would you trust a computer to diagnose you if you went to a hospital? And I think most people would say no. You wouldn't want to put.
I think also it's generations. I think as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it's more. We put our faith in computing quite a lot with GPS. I mean, obviously, we kind of rely on it so much. I think maybe we do have more of a kind of blasé. Yeah, I would believe you, computer. Kind of. So maybe our children, your kid on the way in August. 5th of August, awesome. Best day of the year. No bias. But maybe they'll be more so. And
well. It is a really, really interesting topic, artificial intelligence, and there's so many things I'd love to talk about, and just little silly things like when you start talking about neural networks and like, what is pain? Could a computer feel pain? All those kind of things.
I think we definitely need to do kind of like a side episode that if anyone wants to listen to it, we just because I'd love to hear about that. That sounds really cool.
Really interesting stuff. But we do need to go there at some point. That would be brilliant. And I can't remember how we got onto that. Oh yeah, you were saying that Dijkstra and Turing were your main men in your world.
And Donald Knuth.
Oh yeah, Donald Knuth.
Mr. Knuth is pretty damn amazing.
Yeah. What about Brendan Eich?
Well, he had a little interesting week, didn't he?
Did he? What did he?
Well, he's the creator of JavaScript, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
And he's now the CEO of Mozilla.
Is he?
He is. But so he's CEO of Mozilla, and it turned out like 2008, he had, I can't remember what the actual thing is, but essentially in California, he put money towards not allowing gay people to get married.
Did he?
Yeah, he did indeed.
Whoa.
I know. And so OkCupid, which is a dating site, actually block Mozilla Firefox, or they say, please get another browser, which I think...
Now, this is making a lot of sense to me now, because I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter. This is all making sense. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Because of that. It all came... I mean, it was in 2008, and it's come up now again, obviously, because he's become, big news. And, I don't know what he was thinking. What a twat. But anyway. I mean, really, I'm sorry. Obviously, my views are, if you want to get married, you can get married. I don't have... it's none of anyone else's business. As long as it's legal, then,
Can I just say to all the 12-year-old children that listen to our podcast, I am really sorry for Ed's language. That is appalling.
Oh, what did I say? Bad.
We certainly don't support that language on this podcast, but it happened.
I know. What did I say?
I'm not going to repeat it. You said a T word, a nasty T word.
Twat.
Yeah.
That's not a bad. Well, okay.
It's not a good word, is it?
I'll beep it out.
We can't afford beeping technology. No, it's cool. It's fine. But we are definitely homosexual friendly on this podcast, and I didn't know anything about it.
I was quite surprised because when people I was like, why are they blocking Mozilla Firefox? Is it because of rubbish browser? I'm like, there's IE there, and then I realised all this backstory, and I'm like, why is he doing this? What is he doing, the numpty?
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, we discuss everything in this podcast, don't we?
every issue in the world today.
So anyway, I was going to go to my hot picks, which I picked randomly before the show. So I've got one which was to do with adaptive backgrounds, which looked pretty cool. I think you could basically in HTML specify an image, and then the JavaScript basically does the rest. And when you resize your window, you've now got a nice responsive background image.
That's quite cool.
It's very cool.
It's very cool, actually, yeah.
But like I say, I'm really sorry. I literally did just find this before the podcast. It might be absolutely useless, but we will put it in the show notes. And then if anyone says it's good or bad, that'd be really good.
I was going to come with an anonymous name saying rubbish or something. Just
really awful. Yeah. And another one that I found, which I did test before the podcast, just to check it was reliable, was this Colour Thief site. Basically, it's I've put the link in there, but basically it's a site, and you can basically drag and drop an image in there, and then just click on the image, and it will bring out like the dominant colours in that image.
Yes. Oh, I like that.
The palette.
I like that.
I think I've heard of things like this before.
I can hear Justin DeLucia going, kind of people actually care about this stuff, and that's see. This is the sad thing with me. I'm thinking, oh wow, they use that with Canvas and JavaScript. And I just want to see the implementation, not the actual result. I'm just like, this looks cool.
And yeah. Because there must be a nice algorithm there, you would think, wouldn't you? But I can't imagine that Justin's ever listened to another podcast since being on, to be honest with you.
So uncool.
Very, very uncool. So they're my hot picks of the week. Obviously, I've been using them for months and months, and they are brilliant. So we'll put them in the show notes, and anyone does try it and thinks they're really good, let us know. How about you? Have we discussed your hot picks?
We have. Wow, you were off target. It's early in the afternoon as well. Well, early. It's about 4ish, and
I literally woke up about 2 hours ago, dribbling on my keyboard because I'm so tired. I just completely blanked out. And
it's not like you've got to, after this podcast, go and do 2 assignments, is it? So
exactly. And the thing is, it's only going to get easier because obviously I've got a baby on the way. It's going to get a lot easier, I'm sure. How could it possibly not?
Dear. Poor This is the pity party for Mickey, I think. Pity party Mickey.
Yeah, if you want to send me money...
I've got a PayPal account and a Stripe account.
Yeah, or just a copy of PHP Storm. That'd be fine. No, it's all cool. So, have we... Is that our...
I think we've hit every now and then. Yeah, I think we've hit all those spots.
Politics. We didn't do religion, but...
We didn't do religion, but we'll leave that one.
You've got the algorithm that sorted that out, right?
Yeah, wow. We went there.
Yeah.
What's our topic of the week this week?
I'm glad you asked, Ed.
Yeah, thank you.
Our main topic for this week is frameworks.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, frameworks.
In particular, web frameworks.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we are going to discuss what they are, why you need them.
Yep, why you even care about them.
And can they make your life easier?
Yep.
Can they make your life harder?
Very good points. Yep.
So, you've been very kind to put some notes together. So
define kind as in sad. I spent an hour and I just this is quite cool. I just enjoy looking up this stuff. It's quite fun.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll start from the top, as any good list should work, I guess.
Yes. So I suppose the real question is, so I'm sure, as everyone knows, so even if you only created a couple of websites from scratch, and I mean from scratch, there's chances are you've had to solve some of the same problems over and over again.
Yeah.
And that is a pain. It violates that gospel, don't repeat yourself ethos, that dry principle of you're just going over it again. Maybe you do some copy and pasting, which still copy and paste isn't really don't repeat yourself. Well, actually, if from different projects, there's a better way of doing it. So typically what you do then is you're like, well, you find a library, to make things easier. You're like, oh, there's an image manipulation library or something like that, and that helps development, so you don't want to go through having to write your own, your own code for, maybe resizing, cropping thumbnails and stuff like that, and you find this image manipulation library, and maybe you use Composer if you're cool, dependency management and stuff, or maybe just copy and paste the file in.
Yeah.
And that's the first sign of, a library is the first sign of the dry principle, is that you've got this self-contained API that you use over and over again, and it solves that problem, and you can put it into many domains and many projects, and it will be useful in each one of them.
Yeah.
And then what happens though is you soon find out that you may need more. And that is when frameworks come into play.
Yeah.
We all get that at different times, I think. I was quite late to the party on frameworks, actually. I think my mindset's more like, I want to know what's going on and stuff.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be like, look back and say, okay, I trust this framework to do this. But typically a framework, it's larger, obviously, and it normally encompasses many different libraries that all work together. The thing that gets a lot of people is because the overall program's flow of control is not dictated by you now, but by the framework. So the URL mapping, maybe you've got an inversion of control container. They decide how that all works and how that all the actual life cycle works. But there is the nice thing about frameworks is a good framework provides allows you to extend it by selective overrides or hooks into the framework's execution lifecycle, such as events and stuff like in CodeIgniter in particular. You're able to extend classes, etc., and expand on them without changing the actual internal code. And that's another thing with a framework, also a library, is that really you shouldn't modify the code. You should just extend it.
I completely agree with you on this point. One of the things I was going to say, actually, and I'm glad you put this in the notes, is that to me, one of the main things, I haven't worked with too many frameworks, don't get me wrong, but for me, one of the most important things would be that the ease to extend it, the accessibility of the framework. And I know this isn't popular for you, but certainly the first framework I used was CodeIgniter. And
same with me. That I can't knock it. I really can't. I act like I knock it now, but no, I can't knock it. It is a very good framework, and it really does help you learn.
But I remember just dropping things in that libraries folder, and they were there all then ready to use. It was just really nice. I think I had a PayPal class I put in the libraries folder, and it was just there.
And you could load it up. You could use their loader, not auto loading, but their loader class, and you'll be able to interact with it. Yeah.
But I remember, I think the first day I ever met you, or the first day we worked together, I think you said to me, the first thing was have you used CodeIgniter? And it was something that I'd been reading about for weeks and weeks, and they had that cool slogan, didn't they? Something like ignite your code or something like that.
That's it, ignite your code, yep.
And to me, being a complete noob at the time, when I met you and everything, I didn't know what a framework was, and I was kind of expecting when I downloaded CodeIgniter to be this GUI type thing that kind of just helped you in that way. And at first, I couldn't get my head around the idea that this framework was just all code based.
That's quite cool. That's a very interesting thing, because IDE support, kind of assistive, that GUI assistive approach. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually,
honestly, it was really naive at the time, but and I'm glad it wasn't like that. But at the time, that's what I was expecting, and getting into it was really weird for me. But obviously, the first time I met you, you were using it, and I could see how powerful it was straight away and out of the box. But sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's fine, man. Well, they're interesting because there are many different types of frameworks, aren't there?
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're talking about web frameworks today, but also I can't, stress there's other frameworks in other software development domains, like application frameworks, like GUI apps, like Swing in Java.
Yeah.
CSS frameworks have now become huge. Bootstrap, Foundation, and your friend Gumby. All these are frameworks in the sense that they give an ethos and a way of development to help you.
Yeah.
And of course, our friend Web Application Frameworks is what we're going to talk about today in particular.
Absolutely. 100%.
So the web is still quite, development in computers are quite, young still really, but web development in particular is 1991, I want to say. Yeah. So it's somewhere, early 90s, really early 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
I was going to say 89 rings a bell, but yeah, definitely.
It was a good year to be born. 5th of August, definitely is a good year. A good month as well. So as web development has matured and we found efficient patterns such as MVC, which we touched on a couple of episodes ago, and libraries have been created. And frameworks aim to alleviate the need to re-implement this functionality again and again. That's their goal.
Yeah.
And you've got different types of frameworks, because it's quite interesting to say, so you've got your general purpose frameworks such as Laravel and Ruby on Rails, which was very influential at its time in 2004. And they're very similar to stuff like general purpose languages like Java, Python, which are used in many problem domains. So you've got your specific languages that are domain specific DSLs that tackle a certain problem. Then you've got these languages that are like PHP that can be used over and used in different things. You don't only have to use PHP for the web. It can be used for the command line. It can be used for GUI applications as well. So, that kind of thing is general purpose. But then you have the Also, it's quite a shock to you that content management systems such as Joomla and WordPress are frameworks.
Yeah.
Because they provide you with the ability to create extensions and plugins and provide you with the foundation to work on to build these things quicker, easier, and more modular and more testable and more understandable to people coming into the actual project.
Note then, on that idea, I mean, did you know WordPress, so they give you, it's a nice documentation for, like, for example, maybe like an active record class, that type of thing?
So I've only had experience personally in Joomla.
Yeah.
And actually it was interesting, the last podcast I listened to on the PHP Town Hall was about Joomla and licensing.
Right.
And they abstracted out of their Joomla, similar to how Ellis Labs did with CodeIgniter, their framework.
Right.
And there's a lot of licensing issues, and I'm sure I'll put that in the show notes. You can go and listen to that one for that. There is a framework to it. And I remember when I was building components in a component in Joomla for a client, you had the ability to use their active record, their ORM, in a sense, object relational mapper, and we'll talk about that a bit later, an active record in itself as well. So they provide you with like the routing, they provide you with the dispatch, event dispatching and stuff like that. So there are things that they provide you as a developer, which you can then use and build on top of and extend, similar to how a general purpose framework does. But obviously in a content management system, you're going to be still using their CMS. But in Joomla's case with the framework, they've actually taken it out like CodeIgniter, so they make it into a general purpose framework as well.
Right, that is really cool. I didn't realise that. That is very cool.
So since most of our web applications are non-trivial, we do require a number of different kinds of abstraction. So abstractions make our lives easier. Like object-oriented programming, the idea of visualizing a user as this object or this type of thing that we can then make instances of makes it a lot easier, abstracts that kind of complexity away.
Yeah.
And we have abstractions like our data layer, our presentation layers, and many frameworks attempt to provide a complete solution. And you'll typically know these as full stack frameworks. And they attempt to supply components for each layer in the stack. So full stack frameworks are like Laravel, are like Ruby on Rails, are like Zend, are like Symfony. Not the component side, but the actual Symfony combined in itself. Things like CodeIgniter as well, Django, and all these other frameworks, like G-Rails, which is Groovy's one and stuff. These are all full stack frameworks which provide you with a lot of things out of the box, batteries included approach, like Python say. You get everything you need.
Okay. Django's the Python one, right?
Django's Python one, which is quite confusing. Now, obviously, Django Unchained came out, and now you Google Django, and you get the first hit is Quentin Tarantino's movie, which is a great movie, but it's kind of confusing now. I don't know I would love to know if Quentin Tarantino actually knows that there was a framework called Django.
Maybe it's like a marketing ploy, so he knew
He knew the Python community. It's like, they're big at the moment.
Clever, like it.
So yeah, I mean, it's quite. I like to ask a question like how. So I mean, have you dealt full stack frameworks? Obviously, are at the moment. So how many frameworks have you actually used in your time as a developer?
Are we talking about like at 2:00 in the morning after a night out, or just in general?
Kind of, I suppose. Actually, ones you've touched on, and then also ones you've actually used in depth.
Okay, so in depth would be CodeIgniter. I probably used that for a couple of years. I've not used it for a little while, but I started off with that, and I think I've said this in many podcasts, but to start with, just couldn't get my head around. I would say I couldn't get my head around CodeIgniter. I couldn't get my head around MVC.
See, that's a very good point you make there, because being full stack, obviously it provides everything out of the box.
Yeah.
So, things that you think are, oh my God, how am I going to get this big beast? And you can actually compartmentalize and say, that's MVC, that's a library.
Yeah.
Thinking of it in that way, less scary.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, obviously, again, one of my main stumbling blocks was a lack of understanding on OO, or object-oriented programming, for anyone who's not heard of it before. But
Oop.
Yeah.
I hate that. Oop.
I should just say at this point, we do have episodes on object-oriented programming, which is episode 9, and we do have one on MVC, which is episode 12. So check them out.
Firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. For anyone who's just joining in and doesn't know about these things, but Yeah, they were my main stumbling blocks. Was Laravel setting on OOP and MVC, which aren't really framework specific. I mean, I'm guessing that there's other ways of doing frameworks, but they were my main stumbling blocks. But yeah, then I got into it and I just fell in love with how quickly you could do stuff.
Yeah.
I know, don't get me wrong, like quality is better than how quick.
No, well,
but
speed. I mean, you balance it out by how manageable is the code after you've written it for someone else.
Yeah.
And how easy is it for you to get back into it yourself? If you've made this beautiful framework but no one knows it, is it better than a framework that may be less efficient, effective, but everyone knows it? It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I would go with the framework that's heavily documented, but maybe not as good as the framework that only I know because I wrote it and I have no documentation.
Yeah. Other ones, I guess, yeah. Laravel, I used for about 6 months when I was working with you.
We used Laravel 3, didn't we? I remember, yeah.
Which I think is quite different from Laravel in its current condition.
The API is very similar, so the conversion's quite easy. But yeah, under the hood, they've done some really cool things.
Yeah, and I think I did play with the latest version that night when we went out, and I came back.
I came back home and I need to go for a Laravel 4 tutorial.
And I actually found that easier to use than the previous version. I have to say, I was really surprised how easy it was to get up and running.
Yeah, because you've got the Composer package install kind of thing, haven't you, now?
Yeah.
Where you download the skeleton and stuff.
It was a lot better. Like the walkthrough on the installation was a lot better, I thought. And yeah, I thought it was really good. And if I was doing a lot of building sites from scratch, I would be using Laravel now, without a doubt. I do think it's really good. And then other than that, I think the only other framework I've played with was on the JavaScript side of things was Angular. And again, I love that. Thought it was brilliant, but I don't do enough JavaScript development to use it all the time.
Well, I mean, I suppose you could also say jQuery framework.
I guess you could.
It's really weird because it kind of toes the line between being a library and a framework.
I was going to say, I think of it as being more of a library.
But you extend it.
You're
with
right.
Your own, and then I'm like, well, hang on a
True.
minute, you're then using their components to extend. I always then think, hang on, that's a framework style thing. So the loose terminology, I think, is another thing, kind of,
Yeah.
And we're going to go into the micro frameworks and stuff later on, which is a whole other ball game. But I suppose the next thing we should probably talk about is what do you expect to come in the framework? I mean, we've talked about MVC. We've talked about this idea of this big old package that's going to control what you do. I mean, what do you get out of the box? What batteries are included?
Well, actually, before we do that, we should flip that question to you. What frameworks have you used?
Oh, okay. So from a sense, I mean, Laravel I've used probably the most now.
Yeah.
I've used that for about 1.5 years, exclusively for quite a bit with one of the projects I'm on.
Yeah.
I've used Django for a couple of months just for fun on my own projects. I've used Ruby on Rails a couple of months for my own projects. I've used Zend for a couple of months for my university dissertation.
Right.
CodeIgniter, obviously, a lot. That was my first framework that I got into, and that's funny because I think a lot of PHP developers, that was their first framework, and it was quite hard to let go of it in a sense, because of you've got a tie to it, I suppose. But I'm always by the thing, well, there's something new and shiny. Don't become attached to something. Become attached to ideas and concepts instead of actual just code in itself. I feel, if that makes sense at all. And then stuff like jQuery. Obviously, I've done Backbone stuff. What other frameworks have I done? PHP wise. Yeah, I have not used Yi. Unfortunately. I dabbled in Cape PHP before I started CodeIgniter. But it was very Ruby-like, and it's really weird because CodeIgniter for me, one of my friends was doing it at the time. I think that's another thing. It's more like who your friend, kind of thing, who's using it, and the way that it was very simple for me. I think that's again, it made sense. Kind of the OO because at that time I was at university and I was learning Java OO, and this idea was like, I can do this in the PHP world. Because I built my own framework, I'd say framework in quotes, where I was just using static classes and just procedural code for stuff like. I mean, I was able to build. I mean, I remember my first e-commerce platform was when I was back at college, and I built it, and it was like I was able to implement a DVD service thing for an essay. Well, not essay, but like an assignment thing. So that was quite cool, and that was just all done procedurally. So moving from that towards a framework, again, I was like, whoa, I'm using all this code that I don't know about. But then I respected it. I was like, well, these people know what they're talking about. And it also allowed me to learn because similar to Laravel, I've learned so many things from Laravel by just reading the source code, which can be quite hard at sometimes, but it makes you learn new things and, it puts you in the right mindset, a way of thinking.
Yeah. I was going to say, the other thing I think is really good, and I don't know about the others to be fair, but Laravel, I mean, the amount of times you see Taylor tweeting about stuff he's bringing into it and stuff, I mean, that's the exciting thing about Laravel is it is still alive and kicking.
I mean, there are, I can't, knock any other of the PHP frameworks because Yee's getting a boost up with Composer, I think. Symfony components are underneath that. Laravel uses all these Symfony components and all these, open source components. Cake, I think, is also is now composified, if we're going to put it in quotes. So there's a lot of good frameworks, and you can build your own. I mean, as Lou's doing, and that's great because it allows you to learn these things and everything. And I think frameworks just help you become a better developer by understanding them, by learning how people make code, and by using them. And and
I guess it's good practice to learn about where to put your files.
That's it, structure. Yep, the best practices on that front, because it's very hard. If you're on your own, you've got free reign to do anything you like. If you've got these restrictions, it helps you. You do start. I mean, at first you're like, oh, I don't like these restrictions. I like doing it this way. But you start to learn, hang on a minute, their way kind of makes sense. And it's not just this one person's vision. It's this whole, as a web industry and a web development, industry as a whole, we've kind of learned, oh, this is the best way to do it and stuff like that. Even in languages, MVC is, globally found to be a good way to do web development.
I guess if nothing else, something good to look at would be the SPL autoload register.
Now that's an interesting one with Composer. Because that's kind of changed our world in CodeIgniter. And I think next week we're going to have an episode on CodeIgniter, aren't we? In full, so we can talk about how they do they do in quotes loading, not auto loading really. They go by this approach where it's just load everything beforehand, kind of include kind of approach. But then that's because that's all you had at that time. Because that framework again, I can't stress enough. For its time, it's amazing, and it's 5.2. 5.2. That's before SPL. The standard PHP libraries came out and stuff. So that at that time, it was doing an amazing thing.
Absolutely. 100%.
So the typical things that you're going to get, and anyone I miss, mate, just please fire in. You're going to get session management and cookie management abstractions. Dealing with your sessions, dealing with your cookies, but you're going to deal with it agnostic, a very high level way where you're able just to write to things. You're going to get alternative storage solutions. Maybe the sessions are managed by a database or file. You'll be able to put these in and out and stuff. You're going to get your authentication and security problem. You're definitely going to get your security done, but authentication optional. Stuff like your cross-type request forgery, maybe. All forms, like I remember in CodeIgniter, you're able to say every form that I generate with the form open class, which we'll talk about later on, will come with a specific token that we talked about the last week, I think it was.
We did, yeah.
And that was episode 18, wasn't it? No, 17.
Oh, get it right.
It was 17? 17?
I mean, look, it was 17.
17, boom.
Yeah.
You need to say every form has to do it, and because obviously you're going through the framework's way of handling things, it will handle it for you. You'll have stuff like input sanitization, filtering, like validation classes are typical, stuff like, the form request. I want to make sure that the email address is required, make sure it's actually been entered, and also it's an email address, or maybe it's valid to a certain, validation, example, like a filter optional class that you have included yourself. Database access is huge. Obviously, with our web applications, databases are pretty much part and parcel with it. So access and mapping, stuff like object relational mappers, which we'll talk about later on in another podcast. I keep saying later on, just put it off. I always feel that. I listen back. I'm really sorry. I listen back and I'm like, yeah, we never actually talked about that. Object relational mappers, which allow you to map, give it an abstraction. So the database is very much columns and rows, where we deal with objects in the other world, and this way it kind of maps between the two. So you can deal with it in object form, and the database obviously stores it in the form that it wants. And then, of course, you've got your active record pattern. Command line tools, such as scaffolding for CRUD applications. So the big thing in 2004 with Ruby on Rails was the fact that there was a video that went out, which was a 15 minutes to create a blog. And the way it dealt with that was by doing scaffolding with CRUD applications. So CRUD is create, read, update, and delete applications. So it's very commonplace actions that we do in everyday applications. Posts, users, roles, everything. They all need CRUD actions. And that was kind of a big thing about it. And all it was doing really was doing scaffolding. So it was creating the default, the basic, the things that you may need for prototyping.
That's what Yi does, right?
Yep, Yi does that as well.
Yeah.
They're add-ons, bolt-ons to stuff like Laravel and CodeIgniter to do it as well. And it was a big thing that back in Rails day, Rails early on was this, oh my god, I can create a blog in 15 minutes instead of writing my own code.
Yeah.
And obviously, and there's another one in Django. I'm sorry about bringing Python up, but great for prototyping is the admin creation. So it actually creates an admin area for you.
I've just been sick.
With the CRUD stuff. Python developers are going to hate you, even though
I know,
I'm sure you don't mind it as a language. I'm sure you'll look at it and you'll be fine.
It's like 15 of them outside my house right now with like pitchforks and stuff. Sorry, man, can I just make a really random segue?
Go for it.
Just talking about databases and stuff just made me think of something I did look at this week, just very, very quickly with my good friend Nick McDowell, and that was graph databases.
Oh, Neo4j.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
That was
J.
surreal, but looked really interesting and looked a lot easier. Not easier, hang on. More natural way of looking at database structure than...
It's domain specific. It's like it works really well for stuff like Facebook and Twitter because I suppose the audience. So I think maybe you've got your relational databases, which you can solve a lot of problems with these relational databases. Like you have users and it's almost like I think Excel kind of thing. Where you've got your rows and columns, but then you have this idea of different types. You've got your NoSQL movement where you've got these graph databases where you have your nodes or your vertexes, and then you have your edges, and literally these are just links to other ones. And say like I'll be an edge, so I'll be a node or a vertex, and then Mickey will be a vertex, and on Twitter, and we have a relationship together because I'm a bi relationship. I follow him, he follows me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But definitely something. I think.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. But definitely something we definitely need to go into because databases. I love databases. Funny story and random tangent. My first job after going to university, I went for a database job.
Oh.
And I went in for the interview, and I was a bit smug and a little bit like, I could do databases. And then, fortunately, they hired me for a programmer role because then I soon realised the databases is hard. Databases are amazing. Database administrators are awesome. They don't get the respect they deserve. Because we're so program minded. We're like, I'll just loop through it, algorithm, and like you think, well, you really need to get it fast. We can't just and dealing with stuff in SQL and handling that and the power you can do by that. In there, do it in one SQL query when we just get a script the size of God knows what to make something happen is definitely very.
Like you say, it's a lot of material for another week, but there is like a PHP API, a Java API. We'll put it in the show notes, and it just for now, just go and check out the website. There's a video on the landing page. Just check out the video. It's
very cool. It's a topic that I really want to talk about because I love databases now.
I hate databases, but this made a lot more sense to me. It seemed more natural, more human.
Well, the amount of big data we've got now, and that's another buzzword, is But anyway, actually that moves on to the good thing with database scaffolding and migration. So you've got your scaffold for CRUD apps, but migrations, the idea that you version control your database. So Laravel does this, and also Ruby does this, Ruby on Rails. So when I say Ruby and Ruby on Rails, people get really angry because Ruby is the language, but obviously Rails is the predominant thing that made Ruby famous. But then it kind of works both in, that the fact that Ruby is a lovely language in itself. So random tangent there, but anyway, so migrations allow you to version control in a sense your database schemas by saying, when I'm at this point, I want my database to look like this and stuff like that, and that's good for, a framework to be able to do. Then you get into your URL mapping and routing, and you definitely want that. All frameworks, even micro frameworks, have this. The idea routing URL paths to functions or Lambda, functions that you want to be able to return results from. Yeah. And there's many different ways of doing that, as we will discuss, I'm sure, in CodeIgniter and Laravel. There's very, explicit ways and implicit ways to do that by controller names or by actually declaring that this pattern makes it go to this closure or this controller or this function. Then you have templating. Templating is a huge one because that's like languages such as Blade, which is in Laravel, and Twig, which is PHP agnostic, to all the, and then forms and stuff like that, form helpers.
Yeah.
And these help, nullify, and we talked about this last week and the week before, in episode 16 it must have been, I think, the first one of them, cross-site scripting attacks. So these will help, you deal with those type of problems, by providing you with these, these tools and this framework, in its essence, to, produce good, safe code. Then you get stuff like caching. Caching is very important. Caching's a very simple concept that people I think sometimes they get scared of, but really all it is the idea that I don't want to run something, I don't want to run something twice. I don't want to run something each time. I can cache it maybe for 5 minutes. Like Google caches their results. So every time you do a Google search, you're not actually Google isn't probably hitting you with going, oh, I better go search for that, uniquely. It's probably already cached it because someone else has already searched for the same thing, or certain partial bits of it have already been, searched for. Language frameworks can deal with this, like produce templates, partial templates, and also database queries can be cached for a time to live, TTL. Or for a long time to kill the cache.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good topic for a podcast. Actually, is caching, because it's not an area that I've really.
Well, you've got so many different. You've got file caching, memory caching, data. So that'd be really cool. Logging and errors. So logging platforms in frameworks are huge. CodeKnight has it. Laravel has it. Zend has it. Symfony. Ways to display errors, ways to log errors in a nice way.
Yeah.
Then you have, so the last two I've written down is hooks into the execution lifecycle and extensibility. So that extendable, I think a framework should be extendable.
Yeah.
I think even if you're a full stack framework, you should have the ability to extend it because, you're not out of the box, batteries included, going to be able to give what everyone wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally is the emphasis, and this is quite a new one, emphasis on unit testing and best practices definitely is for everyone, but the emphasis on unit testing.
Yeah. 100%.
The ability to provide a framework and a ethos and a design that allows you to easily test what you've built on top of it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, for anyone who is quite new into any sort of development, really, for anyone who's been doing it for years will know this, but logging can be really, really helpful, especially if you've got something that's happening on a live website and you don't know why it's happening, or your options are limited, really, because it's a live site. But logging can be a really, really good way of finding out what's going on. So you might have something that's happening for one person and not another person. But if you can log some details, you can often get to the bottom of the problem just by a bit of investigation, really. But yeah, any help with that that a framework gives you is really invaluable, I guess.
Completely agree. Logging saves my life. My life at least a couple of times. Because, as you say, you've got these edge cases where someone hits it and you're like, well, at least I now have a full stack trace of what's gone on and email. Yeah. Actually, I've got a blog post this week that I'm preparing at the moment for handling PHP errors and logging. So,
ooh, very nice.
It'd be quite cool. Like a really simple monologue kind of thing.
And just make sure you don't save your log file to the root of your website.
Yes, that was a security thing. Yes.
People's card details or something like that.
Yeah, that would definitely not be what you want to do. Probably don't even log the card details. Just, as I say last week, the information you don't have is the information they can't steal.
Yes. I like that. Very nice. I don't remember you saying it, but yeah, that's great.
And then finally, I've got is micro frameworks, which is this big buzzword from full stack frameworks where, hey, we're simpler, and they kind of go by simpler motto in quotes, and stuff like Slim and Silex, which uses Symfony components.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to find a definitive description of what a micro framework is compared to a full stack because everyone has their own opinion. And again, Python world, the best description I have found is on Flask, which is in the Python world. And actually, if you don't mind, I will actually just read out these two paragraphs because I think they best just replace Python and Flask with any other framework and any other language.
I'm going to allow this one time.
Allow this, thank you, sir. So what does micro mean? Micro does not mean that your whole web application has to fit into a single Python, and anything you want there, insert language file, although it certainly can. Nor does it mean that Flask is lacking in functionality. The micro in micro framework means Flask aims to keep the core simple but extendable. Flask won't make many decisions for you, such as what database to use. Those decisions that it does make, such as what templating language to use, are easy to change. Everything else is up to you. so that Flask can be everything you need and nothing you don't. By default, Flask does not include a database abstraction layer, form validation, or anything else where different libraries already exist that can handle that. Instead, Flask supports extensions to add such functionality into the application as if it was implemented in Flask itself. Numerous extensions provide database integration, form validation, upload handling, various open authentication technologies, and more. Flask may be micro, but it's ready for production use of a variety of needs. And I think that's the best way of explaining micro frameworks, where a full stack framework provides you everything and the kitchen sink. It provides you with CodeNight, it provides you with form, all these things. And libraries are out there that specifically are, good at what they do. And micro frameworks have this idea of, I'm just going to put them together. I'm going to have my ethos on how I handle stuff, but I'm going to say, I'm going to use these. And I think Laravel is a weird one, because Laravel actually started off very micro in the sense that it just bundles these Symfony packages composed together, but it's added a lot more on top, especially like Eloquent and stuff. But frameworks like Slim and Silex, and then Flask in the Python world, and they've all definitely, with their routing, the way they route stuff, and also with the demos you'll get in Laravel, is very much influenced by Sinatra in the Ruby world again. So Ruby has been a very influential language for the web.
I tuned out at Python. Sorry, I heard that. Fell asleep. Sorry.
I hate you.
No, that was a good description. I liked it. It's good. We have gone over the hour mark, man.
We have, and I that's my notes run out. I mean, really,
perfect timing.
It is good timing, yeah.
It's like we rehearse this
3 times. Back to back.
3 times a night. Cool. So, anything that you wanted to say to nicely wrap up this podcast? Use frameworks.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I guess one thing we've not discussed. Well, I think we've mentioned it in other podcasts, but how big a site does it need to be?
That's it. That's a very good question, actually, because if it's a simple brochure site, but I'd say what a nice thing a framework does. If you pick a framework and you stick with it, and it's got a good community behind it, is you get the backing of the community for help and stuff. You also get, if someone wants to come in now, CVs and stuff. People will say, I'm a Laravel developer or I'm a CodeNight developer. They'll get this confused by, like, I'm a jQuery developer, but really you're not. You're actually a JavaScript developer who knows jQuery's framework or library. So you get this confusion, but it's good to know people. You'll be able to employ, or you'll be able to get someone in who knows about that framework, and you'll be able to get them, with the good documentation, with that support, hit the ground running.
You know what? I think I've used a framework for like a landing page of a contact form before.
Just because you've got all the things, haven't you? You've got the routing, you've got the whole thing of mail may be supported inside. Actually, yeah, normally is. And you've got the sanitization, the input validation, the database classes, everything's all done for you.
And people say, well, it's overkill. But I mean, come on, a framework, something like CodeNight is probably what, like 4 or 5 megabytes or something?
I think it's 2.5 or something.
Is it?
Which is nothing compared to
in
what
this day and
Laravel
age.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. They have their own, but yeah, so I completely agree there.
So I'm not going to get into an argument about, a performance hit or anything like that. It'd be laughable, really. So, yeah, in my mind, there's nothing that's too small to justify a framework, really. But that's quite controversial, I don't think.
I agree. So, controversy to both of us. Oh, dear. Well, that's me done,
awesome.
Man. That's me done.
Well, thanks so much. You did a great job, as always. So, I think...
And you too, sir. And you too.
Thank you. I'm pleased. But, yeah, next week, like you say, we're gonna look at CodeNight, and that's not to say we think it's the best or the worst or whatever. It's just we think it's a good one to start off with, a nice entry-level one to look at. And then, you can make your decision. We'll look at other frameworks as well in the future, but we're just going to start off with CodeNight because it's one that we've all used amongst all the free devs in the Maybe group. So, yeah, join us for that. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.